When trust cracks, outline you approved, keeps the narrator faceless, and avoids filler. Sarah had always described her marriage as steady. Stability was its greatest strength, but also the thing that left quiet spaces in her chest. Adrian was kind and constant, a man who never forgot to lock the door or check the gas before bed. Their conversations were polite, their routines efficient. Nothing in it was wrong, yet a part of her longed for something unnamed, a pulse that might break through the evenness of their days. One Thursday, a message appeared on her phone while she sat at her desk. The name startled her, Marco. A friend from university, absent from her life for almost a decade. His words were simple: saw your name in an alumni article. Made me think of you. Coffee sometime. But they landed with the weight of another life. She hesitated before answering, rereading each line as though it carried hidden codes. By the time she replied with a polite yes, a warmth had already spread through her chest. Quiet and disorienting. That evening, she cooked pasta while Adrian told her about a new project at work. She nodded, stirred sauce, and kept her phone face down on the counter. The small device felt like a secret glowing against the wood. She wondered whether Adrian could sense a shift, but his focus stayed on the presentation he needed to finish. She admired his reliability even as she wished he would look closer, ask why her smile looked different. Memories trailed behind Marco's name. Late nights in crowded cafes during their studies, laughter over bad coffee, an almost confession once, interrupted by exams. She had filed it away as youthful static, never dangerous. Now, after years of mortgage payments and quiet weekends, the memory glimmered with a sharper edge. The following day, she walked to work replaying their brief exchange. She told herself meeting for coffee was harmless, friends reconnected all the time. Yet she caught herself adjusting her hair in shop windows, rehearsing how casually she might greet him. The logic sounded thin even in her own head. She tried to banish the thought, but it returned whenever the office slowed, weaving itself through spreadsheets and routine emails. That weekend, Adrian suggested they drive to a nearby park. They strolled beneath trees just starting to brown for autumn. He slipped his hand into hers and talked about repainting the living room before winter. She smiled and agreed, but the conversation felt like something happening through glass. She hated herself for comparing his gentle steadiness to the spark she imagined in Marco's eyes. On Monday, Marco sent another message, still up for that coffee. I'm free Wednesday. She tapped the screen, deleted her reply twice, then finally wrote, sure, after work. The decision lodged in her stomach like a stone. She kept the appointment secret, telling herself it was too minor to mention. The days until Wednesday stretched and shrank at once. At night she lay beside Adrian, listening to his breathing while planning questions for Marco. Would he ask about her marriage? Would he talk about his? She felt dishonest even as she told herself she intended nothing beyond conversation. When Wednesday arrived, she left work with a pulse of anticipation under her ribs. She caught her reflection in a glass door, tidy clothes, composed expression, nothing to reveal the tangle inside. She imagined a line drawn somewhere in front of her, invisible but real. Crossing it might begin something she could not easily undo. She checked her phone once more, reading Marco's confirmation. "I'm here." Corner table. Her breath caught. For a second she thought about turning around, inventing an excuse, returning home early to help Adrian with dinner. But curiosity pressed harder than caution. She slid the phone into her bag and walked toward the cafe, each step carrying the quiet weight of a choice not yet made. "Would you like me to continue with section 2 in the same concise style?" Marco stood as Sarah approached, his familiar smile both comforting and unsettling. They exchanged a brief greeting before sitting, the quiet between them charged rather than awkward. He asked about her work, her city life, how the years had treated her. She answered carefully at first, then with growing ease as they sifted through shared memories. He spoke about travel, new ventures, and an ambition that still sparkled in his eyes. Compared with Adrian's measured pace, Marco's stories felt vivid, untamed. She caught herself leaning forward, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. The movement embarrassed her. She folded her hands to still them. Every laugh from him pressed closer to the part of her she had kept locked away. When he asked if she was happy, the question seemed casual, yet it slipped beneath her defenses. She nodded quickly, saying she was fortunate, that Adrian was solid and dependable. The words sounded rehearsed, as if she were reading from a safe script. Marco only held her gaze, a faint challenge in his calm. Their meeting ended with a promise to catch up again. Walking home, she replayed everything, editing and re-editing details. She told herself it was simply pleasant to meet someone who remembered her before she became defined by lists and routines. Yet the pulse in her chest refused to settle. That night Adrian made tea and offered her the bigger blanket. She thanked him, tried to match his warmth, but part of her stayed in that cafe, watching sunlight on Marco's sleeve. Messages began to pass between them like stones skipping over water, light, quick, gathering momentum. They spoke of books, films, the oddities of daily life. Small phrases carried double meanings she pretended not to notice. She started reaching for her phone during lunch, on train rides, even in the kitchen while stirring sauce. Once, Adrian asked if something was wrong because she seemed distracted. She smiled, blamed work, and promised she was fine. His trust landed heavy on her conscience. That a week later Marco suggested a walk near the river after office hours. She hesitated, scrolling back through their words, searching for a way to keep the conversation innocent. Agreeing felt reckless. Refusing felt like closing a door she wasn't ready to shut. She typed yes before she could talk herself out of it. The riverbank stretched wide under an amber dusk. They talked as if no time had passed, words flowing with the rhythm of their steps. When a breeze caught her hair, Marco brushed it aside without thinking. The touch was brief but set her skin humming. She stepped back, laughing it off, but the echo lingered. They stood watching water curl against the stones, silence full of questions neither dared to voice. She sensed the invisible boundary again, thinner now, fragile as spun glass. That evening at home Adrian asked about her day. She described meetings, emails, safe fragments of hours. He poured wine, content to hear her voice without probing. His easy acceptance made her chest tighten. She imagined telling him about Marco, about the way old memories had started to reshape themselves, but the confession dissolved before reaching her lips. Instead, she thanked him for dinner and let the conversation drift to weekend errands. Sleep offered no refuge. She lay awake, caught between guilt and exhilaration. The possibility of more hovered at the edge of thought, dangerous and luminous. She pictured Marco's expression as he waited by the water, the quiet intensity of it, and felt both drawn and cornered. She told herself she only craved acknowledgement, someone seeing her as more than an extension of stability. Yet she knew how easily that craving could tilt into betrayal. The next morning she tried to bury her thoughts beneath chores. She ironed shirts, planned groceries, scheduled tasks for work. Each effort dulled the pull for an hour, then faded, leaving her restless. Marco's name on her screen later that day reignited everything, a short line asking if she might like to meet somewhere private next time, talk without the press of crowds. Her fingers hovered above the keys, torn between deleting the message or accepting what she already wanted. She placed the phone face down, as if stillness might erase temptation. Through the window, she watched rain beat against glass, each drop tracing a hesitant path. She wondered if loyalty meant staying untouched or if it demanded an honest reckoning with her own heart. The thought unsettled and steadied her all at once. Somewhere beyond the storm waited another choice, inevitable and sharp, demanding an answer she could no longer postpone. Would you like me to continue with section 3 to bring the story to its resolution? Sarah stood at her desk staring at Marco's latest message, the words blurring until they became a single invitation. She closed her laptop and sat still, aware of the quiet hum of the office fading behind her thoughts. All morning she had rehearsed reasons to decline, yet each sounded thin. She could not decide if she feared losing something real or exposing that the longing itself was hollow. By the time she left the building, the sky was heavy with late afternoon light, and her heartbeat kept pace with her steps. The cafe where they had first met was only a street away, but she kept walking, following a narrow lane until it opened toward a quiet square. Marco waited near a low wall, phone in hand, head lifting as she approached. His smile was softer than before, as if he sensed the gravity of what hovered between them. They spoke of ordinary things at first, their words layered with pauses. When he mentioned finding a place nearby where they could talk without interruptions, she felt the air tighten around her. She looked past him, watching people move across the square, a child chasing pigeons, a woman balancing a paper bag against the wind, an older man reading alone. The sight steadied her, reminded her of everything that existed beyond this narrow pool. She thought of Adrian at home, maybe starting dinner, trusting that the life they built was firm ground. The knowledge pressed against her chest, heavier than guilt, clearer than desire. Marco reached out, not quite touching her, waiting for permission. For an instant she imagined letting the moment unfold, allowing curiosity to overtake caution. She could already picture the aftermath, hurried explanations, a house filled with silence, the fracture in Adrian's eyes. The image cut through the haze, leaving only the outline of a decision. She stepped back, small but deliberate, creating a space that spoke for her. The question in Marco's face shifted to understanding, edged with regret. Neither of them named what they had almost chosen. They lingered a few minutes longer, speaking quietly about work and travel, voices steady though something inside had shifted. When they said goodbye, it was without promises. As she walked away, the pull behind her thinned, replaced by a fragile clarity. The temptation had not been a storm she escaped by luck. It was a door she had closed herself. The ride home stretched long, each stop giving her time to replay what had not happened. She felt the tension leave in slow waves, replaced by a sober kind of gratitude. She would need to face the reasons she had wandered toward danger, the dullness that had settled over her marriage, the parts of herself she had allowed to fade. Choosing to step back did not erase those truths, but it gave her room to meet them honestly. Adrian greeted her with a smile when she entered. He asked if the day had been demanding. She answered yes, meaning more than the hours at her job. She watched him moving around the kitchen, the familiarity of it no longer heavy but steadying. She reached for a cutting board, offered to help, small gestures carrying quiet significance. He glanced at her, perhaps noticing something calmer in her expression, but he did not ask. For now, his trust was enough. Later, lying beside him in the dark, she thought about fidelity, not as an unbroken rule, but as a choice renewed in silence, sometimes fragile, always deliberate. She understood how easily distance could grow inside routine, how temptation often arrived not as a storm but as a gentle current promising to wake something sleeping. She also understood that strength did not come from being untouched by desire but from meeting it with clear eyes and deciding where she stood. Sleep found her slowly, threading through thoughts that no longer circled with restless urgency. Tomorrow would bring its own steady rhythm, work, errands, quiet meals. She felt ready to step into it with a steadiness earned rather than assumed. The memory of Marco's gaze would remain, not as a wound but as a reminder of a line she had chosen not to cross, of the fragile weight and quiet dignity of keeping faith with herself and with the life she had built. This closes the story, showing Sarah's reckoning, her choice, and the calm that follows.